This week comes news of another publisher closing, and Jeff regales us with tales from his writers group.
Welcome to the Big Gay Fiction Podcast, the show for readers and writers of gay romance fiction. If you can read it, write it, watch it, or listen to it, these two guys are going to talk about it. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Adams and Will Knaus.
Welcome to episode 21 of Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast. I'm Jeff from JeffAdamsWrites.com.
And I'm Will from WillKnaus.com. So, Jeff.
Yes, Will.
From what I understand, you have finished up some projects this week.
Yeah, one project wrapped itself up pretty well. I had a short story that I worked on during one of my LA trips. Back, I think it was January's. And I shelved it because I had some work to do on Codename Winger to actually get it, ready for beta. While that's been in beta, I've come back to this story, finished up the edits on it, and it will actually land on your desk within the next day or two, as I get those edits put back into Scrivener.
Okay.
So, also got some news this week. One of my people reading the Codename Winger beta liked it, so. Thumbs up there. Just some initial feedback, not a big bulk of it by any means, but at least the initial feedback was that it didn't suck.
That's good.
So I appreciated that.
Yay for not sucking.
Yes. How was your week?
My week was fine. Nothing out of the ordinary to report.
All right.
So
that's good.
Yeah.
So I did finish a book this week too. I finally finished Stolen Suitor by Eli Easton, which is either 3 or 4 in the Dreamspinner series. I forget. I mentioned last week that I really liked the book, where I was as I was approaching the last quarter of it. I totally fell in love with it. I love the fact that you've got a primary plot with Jeremy and Chris figuring everything out and having the primary romance, but then there's this other romance with Jeremy's brother and this rancher widow that takes place too, that you get to watch on the side, and it's really nice. I loved it. I think it's, of the 3, I've loved all 3 Dreamspins I've read so far, but I think this one just kind of nudges itself into the top spot for me.
Cool.
So I've got an entire review over on jeffandwill.com that I'll link to in the show notes.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, I also read a book this week. This week, it was a nonfiction title. It was called Writing to the Point by someone named Algis Budrys.
That's a name.
And that is his real name.
Wow.
If
you had that kind of cool name, why would you change it? That's awesome.
So, Writing to the Point is a classic writing book. It's a how-to book. And Algis Budrys is well respected within the sci-fi community. He's one of those old school guys, and Writing to the Point was his take on writing fiction and his how-to tome. It was released sometime in the mid-'80s, and AB, as his friends called him, used the techniques in that book to teach classes and workshops and seminars throughout the years. The reason I was interested in this particular book is that Dean Wesley Smith and Christine Catherine Rush were friends with A.B., and the storytelling techniques that they teach have their genesis in what Algis Budrys teaches. So I wanted to go back essentially to this original source and see what he had to say about some of the techniques that Dean and Chris support and espouse. The book has been slightly updated. They mention in the beginning of the book that there are some, since it was, released in the 80s, there were some anachronisms. So they changed, typewriter to laptop and things like that. But mainly the bulk of the information of the book is the same. And most of it is still applicable, including the stuff he has to say about story and structure. By the way, the 7-point story structure that Dean Wesley Smith teaches in his Ideas to Story workshop and writing and selling short stories workshop. Both of those workshops sort of build on what AB teaches, and that information was still solid and valid. There was some other stuff that just kind of left me scratching my head. There's a short chapter in this book about agents that is so out of date and so wrong and frankly toxic. I don't understand how they could have, in good conscience, still included it without some sort of asterisk like next to it. Like in baseball when someone, they find out someone's been doping, so they put an asterisk next to their name in the Hall of Fame or whatever. I really feel that, they should put an asterisk next to this entire chapter, because what was once acceptable and appropriate, and really the only way to do things, the old way, back in the day, is you had to go through agents and the Big Five, and that none of that advice is appropriate anymore. And like I said, it's toxic. So the book, in summary, I think the book was fine. I actually believe that what Dean and Chris teach in their workshops is better. I think they extrapolate the information better and present it in a I think they expand on that information in a much better way than the original source material. So while I'm glad that I experienced the original source material, I don't necessarily recommend it. I prefer Dean and Chris's teachings on this particular subject.
Okay, that's fair.
So there you go.
To kind of completely switch topics, we've talked about the books now. We'll move on to the TV a little bit. Mm-hmm. Can I just say that I am totally going through a withdrawal of Hallmark movies? I mean, if you look at how they programmed for us across the month, with Halloween started the push towards Thanksgiving, which led towards getting into Christmas, which led into Winterfest, which went into Valentine's Day, and we were getting an original romantic movie / holiday movie at least every Saturday, and sometimes Saturday and Sunday, especially around Christmas and leading into Valentine's Day. Since Valentine's Day, there's been nothing. Not one new original movie. I don't care about these series, at least not at this point. Wind Calls the Heart may be great for some people. I'm not there. I'm interested in the one that Jesse Metcalfe is in July, because it's Jesse Metcalfe, and who doesn't want to look at him?
Yeah.
But, oh my God, I'm missing the Hallmark movies.
I'm sorry.
It makes me sad.
Jeff has a sad.
I have a sad. But what we did watch recently was the 6-episode event of The X-Files. Mm-hmm. I admit, I watched The X-Files back in the day. I did not carry on very much after Gillian and David left. And, Robert Patrick and Annabelle Gish, I believe, came in. I did watch the first theatrical film, but did not see the second. Mm-hmm. Although I wouldn't mind seeing the second. I was excited about The X-Files. I felt like we were getting something cool with that. I felt like we were getting a 6... Oh, and I should mention, before we get too far into this, we're going to try and be spoiler-free here, but if you want to hear nothing about The X-Files, you might want to jump forward. Just saying. Fair warning. I felt like we were going to get a 6-episode closed story. Mm-hmm. And boy, that didn't happen. Mm-mm. Big-ass cliffhanger there at the end. Mm-hmm. With now Fox saying they'd love more X-Files and maybe a movie too. Oh, yay. But I don't feel like they gave me what I thought I was getting based on the advertising leading up to it. Mm-hmm. If I'd read the blurb for that book, I don't think I got the book I paid for. And it's odd because I liked the 4 episodes that were bookended by what seemed to be the bigger story. Individually, they reminded me a lot of classic X-Files episodes and what they did there, but as a package, I was bummed.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I'll come back if there's more.
Yeah. I agree with you. We talked about this earlier. I don't feel like I was given what we were promised. It's all about audience expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this doesn't mean that this wasn't a quality show and that I didn't enjoy aspects of the show. I think the show was still very well written and very well produced in the vein of the original series. I love Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny.
Mm-hmm.
It was wonderful to see them back on screen with these same characters. I thought both of them were really terrific.
Yeah. In fact, it's one of the... Sorry to interrupt, but it's one of the things that makes me less annoyed about spending 6 hours with something I didn't get what I expected.
Yeah.
They pulled it off so that I'm not a totally annoyed fan.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think the biggest problem is that this wasn't a 6-episode, for the most part. It wasn't a 6-episode story arc.
Mm-hmm.
It was 6, essentially, individual episodes.
Well, it was 6 episodes with bookends. The first and the last connected. I don't feel like there was a connection to the middle 4.
No. So while the show itself was good, it didn't live up to what we thought we were getting, and it wasn't a closed series. The finale is incredibly open-ended, annoyingly so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not satisfying at all.
No.
When there's no official word if it's actually ever going to come back. See, I find it so very hard to believe that they would leave it so purposefully open-ended when
you don't know.
When you don't know if it's going to come back. It took all this time for the stars to align to get this show back on the air.
Yeah.
Is it possible that they're going to do more? Isn't it common knowledge that Gillian and David aren't exactly,
best buds?
They're not best friends. So they may both have been reluctant to come back and do the show again.
And there's certainly been what Gillian's talked about with the pay discrepancy between her and David, too, and she may not choose to fight that battle again.
Yeah, that's very true as well. So...
I do have to say, too, while we called out David and Gillian, that I absolutely loved Robbie Amell and Lauren Ambrose, who showed up
so
in the last 2 of the 6 episodes.
Yes.
Maybe it could just come back with them.
It's possible.
X-Files, the next generation.
Yeah, it feels like that's what they were trying to set up. So I think overall it was a good-ish experience.
Mm-hmm.
That final cliffhanger finale is kind of a big fuck you to the audience.
Oh, look at you making us put an explicit on the episode this week.
Well, it was. That's what it was. So, yeah.
It was. As I read more than one comment, and I can't speak from personal experience because we did not finish Lost, but a lot of people kind of categorized it as like how Damon and JJ kind of stuck it to the Lost fans at the end, too.
Oh, God, Lost. What a clusterfuck, I swear.
Oh, there's a Netflix wasn't for us this week.
Well, it was. We all know it. Anyway.
So, the gay romance world lost a publisher this week.
Yes, they do.
As on this past, I believe it was Friday,
Mm-hmm.
that Samhain announced that they were going to shut their doors.
Yes.
They did not put an end date on it,
Mm-hmm.
and they seem to be going out with a lot of grace, at least in the initial announcement, the way it sounds like they're headed out. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a blow to the industry, although maybe not a gigantic one, as we
Yeah.
were kind of talking about it yesterday.
Yeah, unlike Amber Allure, who announced in January that they were closing, Amber Allure had a very specific end date. They're going to be shutting down at the end of March. Samhain has essentially, it seems it's very open-ended. The letter that they released to all their authors seemed that, saying it was really a graceful way of saying, thanks for the memories. It was like we're essentially winding down now, with no actual closing date mentioned. So it could be several months. It could be the end of 2016. We don't really know from a business standpoint what their plans with that are specifically. But I think this also goes back to some of the tough times the small publishing industry has been having. Something that we touched on when we spoke to J.M. Snyder a couple of episodes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Sam, did I just call them Samhain? Did I for some reason, whenever I say their name, I always want to put an H in there, like Shammy or something like that.
Samhain.
That's Samhain. Okay, so yeah, so now 10 years ago when they first opened, they had a very solid business model that worked for them for quite a while, and they were very, very successful. But I think maybe that this is all supposition on my part, of course. They became locked into that specific business model and weren't able to pivot or change with the times, not only because of what Amazon has brought to the book-selling party, but the expectations of readers and their new reading and buying habits. Those have definitely changed over the last 10 years. So I don't think we should raise our pitchforks and torches against Amazon. I don't think that's the main culprit. I think, once again, this is pure supposition on my part. It's that they seem to have found a business model that worked for them, and they stuck with that when they should have tried to have been more flexible.
Yeah. And to be fair, I may have snuck up on them. I mean, we know from talking to JM that a good part of her business is trying to read the tea leaves of the future.
Yeah,
and it's not always easy.
It's a very strange and fast-moving time, and it's hard for everybody.
And really, when Amazon... This is the one thing I would say against Amazon, is that they're not good at necessarily telling people how to dodge and pivot with them.
But that's not their responsibility.
They just go off and do it. Well, I think it's difficult when you've got a zillion self-publishers and small businesses out there doing their thing. And I'm not saying a little more on their part would help. They don't have to do it for sure, but they could be potentially better partners. Think like how Kobo and Smashwords to a degree kind of work with their authors more. Amazon's bigger than that because they do more than books, but...
Well, yes.
Amazon is what it is, so it's hard to raise your pitchforks against it.
No, I don't think this is a cause for a particular outcry.
Yeah, and I don't mean to imply that it is. I'm just saying Amazon could do better at helping you wrap your head around what they're doing, but they don't have to.
No, they don't. Yeah. They don't have to, and they shouldn't, because that's not their job. I don't agree with that.
You don't agree. That's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
We're allowed to disagree with each other. Now, something we can agree on is how awesome Chris Fox is doing. How's that for a segue?
Oh, you're so smooth.
24,000 words he's written in 5 days.
Yeah. So
my mind can't hardly comprehend that.
It's very impressive.
Yeah.
Now, in the previous episode of the podcast, I brought up author Chris Fox and his attempt to write a complete novel in 21 days.
Not just write, but publish.
That's true. Write and publish. He is now on day 5, as Jeff mentioned, and he is almost 25,000 words into his sci-fi novel. You can follow along with Chris at chrisfoxwrites.com/challenge. And he's been doing a series of videos to show everyone just how he's doing what he's doing, and then the techniques and that sort of thing. Something Chris brought up is he was surprised by the number of other authors who are shadowing him, who are also taking part in their own 21-day challenge. One of whom is a guy named Kevin McLaughlin. He's also a sci-fi writer. And he is doing the same challenge. He's writing a book in 21 days. And he is detailing the entire process on his own website. His techniques are a little bit different than Chris's, and he goes into that in some of his blog posts. I should say that the fact that we bring this particular story up here on this podcast doesn't mean that what I'm trying to say is, to the best of my knowledge, Chris Fox is not gay. He certainly does not write gay sci-fi fiction. The reason I have brought this story up is because I think Chris is a very smart guy. He's certainly a savvy businessman, and he's a talented author. And I think the writers in our genre, they would do well to pay attention to what Chris is doing, because I think it's certainly applicable to what some of the self-publishers in our genre are doing. Mm-hmm. So that's why I have brought him up on these two past episodes. Yeah. So yeah, I look forward to continuing to follow him along on his lightning fast journey to publishing success.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we hit the road this week. On Wednesday, we head out. We are going to the Dreamspinner Author Conference in Orlando, which is coming up this Friday through Sunday. So that would actually be March 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Yeah.
As I focus on some calendar that's behind us. Looking forward to that. Mm-hmm. We've always heard good things about this conference and what it teaches authors. If you're an author who's going to be there, track us down while you're there, because we're going to be recording some stuff for the podcast that'll come out in the weeks following. So we'd love to see people. We might even have some magnets to give out if you track us down, because we do have a little show swag that we'll have with us.
Yes.
Question of the week. We got a lot of responses.
Mm-hmm. Now, last week when we had the Kindles on, they wanted to know, as an author or a reader, do you use Kindle Unlimited? Do you like it, and why? Yeah. And we did get a ton of answers. Yeah.
We tend, for those of you who don't follow the MM Romance group on Facebook, which is tied to the MM Romance group on Goodreads, we tend to post the questions of the week there to widen the bulk of what we hear, because the folks in that group have great opinions and great feedback. Yeah. And boy, did they speak up this week with some 40 responses to the question. One of the ones we heard from was Serena Bowen, who is actually our guest coming up on next week's episode. She says that she does not use KU as a reader, mostly because the books that she wants to read are not on there, and she doesn't like signing up for things that are on a rolling monthly basis. Also, since KU cut the payout to the authors again last month, there will be more authors pulling out. It's down more than 20% since last summer. I think right now the KU payout is 0.004 cents.
Less than half a cent a page read, yes.
Less than half a cent a page read. And to give you an idea of the page reads, for those of you who don't follow this stuff, I can tell you that my book, Flipping for Him, which is a 95-page paperback, counts as 153 Kindle pages. And so I get about 60 cents if you read the entire book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just to put that into some math perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting from both the reader and the author point of view there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that some of Serena's books go in and out of KU because she does use it as an author, but obviously she may reconsider as the 20% as the reader as the cut goes down.
Yeah. Nancy said that I don't subscribe to Kindle Unlimited. I've always bought books because I want to own them. I reread many of my books. I also buy books because I want to support authors. They need to be paid for their work. Years ago, I was looking for reviews of a new Jordan Castillo Price book, and I found that book on a BitTorrent site. I was appalled. I let her know and promptly bought the book. I also buy books and don't read them immediately, so KU would not work if I didn't read the book immediately. Yeah. So I think she brings up a pretty valid point there, or something we should at least address. When you buy an ebook, you don't own them. Technically, what you are getting for your money is a digital license.
That's true.
To have that ebook on whatever device it ends up living on. You don't actually own them. Such as if you walk into a bookstore and pick up a paperback and buy it, you own that physical object. And you can do whatever you want with that physical object in perpetuity. Mm-hmm. Because you bought it. That's not precisely how digital downloads work.
In some cases it is. It's hard with a Kindle book, for example. I can't take that Mobi file that came from Amazon and give that file to sideload to their Kindle. Because the Kindle's going to know that I bought it from Amazon on my account and that Kindle isn't on their account. Now, if you were to buy an EPUB from All Romance, let's say,
mm-hmm.
and you sideload it, you could, theoretically, you own that file, and you could give that file wherever I could give it to you, I could give it to people who live across the street, and it could go everywhere. So you own the digital file in that case. But certainly for Amazon books, it's more like you own a license, because you can't just go... There's the ability to loan a book,
mm-hmm.
through Amazon if you own I think if you own the book, you can loan it for a set number of days. But it's a lot harder to own that Mobi file. Because if for some reason, I don't know what would happen, like if you ever closed your Amazon account, what would become of all the books that you owned?
Well, you would still have them, I assume.
I don't know how the Kindle would let you read them, though, since the Kindle wouldn't actively be tied to an Amazon account anymore.
I would assume you'd still have them because you still purchased that license.
I would hope so.
Yeah. Anyway.
And also, we did hear a number of people who don't subscribe to KU because they want to own at least the license for that book rather than a book that they have to give back, or a book that could disappear if that book itself came out of KU.
Yes, several people responded that if they are using KU, they might read it, and if they liked the book or they liked the author, they would then turn around and then buy the book because they wanted it in their permanent Kindle library,
mm-hmm.
instead of the sort of like rotating lender's library that you have to what's the word I'm looking for? Shoot.
Return them and rotate them. And...
The lender's library you would end up having to curate when you're in Kindle Unlimited. So.
Yeah, because what I didn't know until we started doing this was you could only put 10 books at a time into your curated KU library.
Yep. Yeah.
So Lee said she loved KU, and here's why. KU took a long time to find its feet in the MM genre, but it's hitting its stride in a big way now. It used to almost all be short gay erotica of dubious quality, but now there's more than enough well-written, bona fide and gay romance titles to make it worth considering. And I think Kendall Alexander is a great example of that. Lee also went on to point out that while it can be difficult to find good stuff on KU in the genre, there is the GLBTQ romance on KU group on Facebook, and there's also a KUMM romance group on Goodreads. We link to both of those in Lee's response on the show notes page. And members in those groups discuss what they're reading, ask for recommendations, etc. Mm-hmm. So it's a good place to go if you're curious what's on KU for the MM genre.
Yeah, okay. AJ said, do you know who this is? They mentioned they're an author.
They are an author.
Do you know who this is?
I don't. I can't think of his name right now.
Okay.
But AJ's been great. He sent you movie recommendations on the podcast Facebook page.
Oh, that's awesome.
And also gave us a review on iTunes. Thank you, AJ.
You're super awesome. Thank you, AJ. Okay, AJ had this to say. As an author, I don't have my books in KU, and I don't plan to anytime soon. While the majority of my sales come from Amazon, I do have readers who find me on Nook, Kobo, and All Romance. I don't want to deprive them of my content. Plus, the royalties are higher for a normal book sale versus a KU sale, as well as a consistent rate. So, AJ brings up some valid points. First of all, having your books available on all the stores is good for your author business in the long run, because more people can presumably find you. Mm-hmm. Now, while Amazon is the alpha dog when it comes to buying ebooks, they aren't the only sheriff in town. Is that the what I'm trying to say?
Kind of works.
Yeah. So there are readers on those other platforms. It's not all about Kindle. So I think he brings up a valid point there. I think any author who is in this for the long haul should really consider making sure that all their books and the various properties are out there on the other platforms. Also, what he had to say about the royalties are higher for a normal book sale versus a KU sale. This isn't necessarily true. There are several different factors in this, depending upon what you set your ebook price at, how long that book is, mm-hmm. and what the current page read rate is in Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah.
So say you have a 500-page novel in KU, but you set the purchase price at $2.99. That would usually get you about $2 every time someone buys that 500-page book. Now, if someone gets that book through Kindle Unlimited and reads the entire thing, it's very possible that, since it's 500 pages long, that you're going to end up getting more money from that Kindle Unlimited read versus an outright sale. So there are a couple of different factors in that. For most people, yes, it is true that a buy is going to get you a better royalty than a Kindle Unlimited page read borrow. But you also have to understand that those are two different people. The people who are the readers who are enrolled in Kindle Unlimited aren't necessarily the same people who are going to be buying your book. So because someone borrowed your book in Kindle Unlimited, that's not necessarily a lost sale. Well, and it may actually turn into a sale, as we heard from several of the readers who true too.
Discover authors on KU because they might be reading on a budget. They're
Mm-hmm.
voracious readers who are on a budget, and KU lets them get these books. That you could have somebody who reads your book, and either if they don't buy that book, they may buy ones that aren't in KU, mm-hmm. or they may love that book enough that they go buy it, so that's in their permanent library.
Yeah.
Kindle Unlimited, I think, and we hear this on some of the other podcasts that we listen to as well, is a tactic to use.
Yes.
For a limited time, or for us, as we talked about when we talked about flipping for you in a couple episodes ago, I'm in KU right now, seeing what it's like. Mm-hmm. Checking it out.
It's an experiment and an attempt to find other readers that you might not otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Rachel is a reader and uses it. There are several authors I definitely follow that always post their books to KU, but I'll definitely go a couple weeks without getting anything. I figure if I get at least 3 to 5 books a month, that pays for it right there, and I usually get more than that. If I like a book enough to keep it, then I'll go buy it. Mm-hmm. So there's one of those right there.
Christina mentioned that my 2015 reading goal was to try a new genre. So I signed up for KU so I could take literary risks without hurting my budget. I ended up jumping into the queer genre and immediately found amazing authors. KU led me to Cora Knight. She led me to Brad Vance. Then I became a reviewer for queer-centric books, which is how I found Jeff Adams. Oh. And the rest, as they say, is history. So there you have it. KU is also a good way to experiment and kind of broaden your reading horizons, as they say, without trying, without a huge financial hit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And apparently, another thing we found out through some of these is that if you keep an eye on KU, there are occasionally sign-up sales where the price will drop to bring people in.
Yeah.
You can see all of the responses we got to this question, along with links where appropriate within those responses on the show notes page for this episode.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone who answered. It was a really lively and interesting discussion. I certainly learned some things, and it was a lot of food for thought.
Yeah, that it was.
So we appreciate it. So at the top of the show, you mentioned that you had completed some projects, but recently, or at least in the last couple of months, a writer's group has become part of your process. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
Okay.
So, a group came together who were listening to Matt Morris and Nancy Elliott's Author Strong podcast. Mm-hmm. They'd done an episode sometime in the past where they were talking about writers' groups and the uses of the writers' groups and pros and cons of writers' groups.
Yeah.
And as a result, one of the podcast listeners put out a message on the podcast Facebook page saying, "Hey, that was a good episode. Does anybody in this Facebook group want to start a writers' group online?" Mm-hmm. And I was like, sure. Because it sounded like, from what I heard in the episode, it sounded like an interesting idea.
What month was this, by the way?
Oh, goodness. See, I knew you were going to ask me that, and I didn't go back.
Was it the holidays around 2015, maybe?
And sort that out. See, while we're on the air right now, I'll just hop to Facebook and see if I can figure out when the genesis of that group was.
Well, you could just lie and make something up.
I know, but, let's just go for reality since we're sitting in front of the computer. Anyway, and our name kind of spun off from even part of the podcast, so we're called the Writers of All the Things. Mm-hmm. And we started around October-ish, it looks like, based on our mission statement that's sitting here. Mm-hmm. And it started out as 10 of us who got together. There is kind of a core group of 4 who always makes it.
Yeah.
Which is myself, Brian, Aaron, and Chris. And we've recently added a friend of mine, Elvis, joined our group as well because we had an opening. And he has joined in. It's an interesting group. I wasn't sure what to expect initially because, especially as we all formed together and we were looking at what everybody writes, I am the outlier here doing gay romance and gay fiction. Mm-hmm. Almost everybody else in the group is doing sci-fi to one degree or another, some fantasy sci-fi sort of work. Mm-hmm. Elvis kind of splits the difference, and one of the reasons I thought he'd be good to bring into this group is because he's got a definite sci-fi angle that he pursues, but he's also working on some MM stories as well, and self-published one last year. And it's been a fascinating place to be. So in general,
Now you guys, you meet online.
Yeah, we Google Hangout every other week.
Okay.
We do it 2 o'clock Pacific time, because we do span time zones. Brian and I and Elvis are in California. Aaron's in Michigan.
Okay.
And then Chris is in Scotland.
Hey.
And we've got a couple other members who show up periodically. I think one's in Texas.
Okay.
One actually knows Matt and Nancy and gets to go to like Author Strong events in that area.
That's cool.
And the other, I can't remember where Patches is at. I want to say Florida, but that could be wrong. So we found the time, that kind of works across these various time zones that we play in. We get together every 2 weeks on a Saturday afternoon. We go over our goals. Like, we have goals that we write down that are documented in this Google Doc.
Okay.
So we know what we're expected to do in our writing for those coming couple of weeks. And then most of the time we go through stories that people submit. Stories or segments of stories. There have been some short stories that we've looked at. There have been entire chapters that we've looked at from people. The group right now is being really great, and they're actually beta reading Codename Winger for me.
Okay.
The group had previously seen the prologue, chapter 1, and the first chapter that has kind of an action sequence in it. Because it's the action that I've never tried to write before.
Right.
And so I wanted more feedback than I would maybe normally get on a chapter. But they were kind enough to decide that they would read the entire book for me. So that's a 60,000 word commitment.
Yeah.
That they're getting a full 2 weeks to do, because sometimes these stories slip in. When we meet on Saturdays, it's great if we have all of our stories maybe by Thursday to read.
Does everyone present something to the group every single week or every other week, or is there a rotating?
It rotates.
Okay.
It's like, who's got stuff ready, who's got stuff that's available.
So it's casual
to present. People who, like, especially for me, because I've been putting in a lot lately for Winger. But if I knew somebody had something and they hadn't presented it in a while, I would hold back one of mine.
Okay.
But there were slots open, so I kept, and the group had the choice, if we wanted to, if they had decided they didn't want to take on 60K in 2 weeks, I would have been, that's cool. Here's another chapter that I'm really curious about, as a separate side item. And we broke our mold a little bit during NaNoWriMo, that our 2 groups that met in November turned into virtual writing sprints. So we got together, we did our little, update on goals and stuff, and then we would do 3 20-minute sprints. Okay. And at the end of the sprint, so like the Google Hangout moves to the side, and we go on mute, and when it's time to come back, our timekeeper, turns on his mic and says, "Okay, time."
Okay.
And then the goal from that was to read either the very last sentence that we wrote, or the strangest sentence that we wrote in that 20 minutes. And it was fun because the group, there's a huge. I say huge, but it's interesting to see how fast people write. Me and one other guy were pretty much always in like that 6 to 650 range. One of them, I think it was Chris, who was often hitting 800 in his 20s. And in a 20-minute sprint for me, 800 is like, wow, did I just really bolt through that sprint? Because I'm usually in that 650 range. So it was fun to see how that kind of stuff worked. So I've enjoyed what it's done for my writing, and I've enjoyed like being able to read other people's stuff. It's proved to me that I still like reading sci-fi too, which I haven't done much lately at all.
Cool. Now, the different members in the group, are any of them pros, or are they all like you who have day jobs?
Most have day jobs. All have day jobs? Yeah, we've all got day jobs.
Okay. Have any of them published?
Yes.
Okay.
There is at least one other in the group who has published. Chris is well on his way to getting a book out. I'd say he'll probably have his book out I think by the middle of the year.
Okay.
The way that he's going, certainly within 2016, he'll have it out.
Mm-hmm.
I think Elvis will definitely have work out again this year, and Brian is on that path.
Cool. Okay.
So yeah, it's also kind of nice that there's people in different phases of where they are with their writing journey.
When you present work, is it what is the critique process like for your group?
We get to say what we want, what feedback we need.
Okay.
So like for the winger action sequence, I was like, I really need to know how this holds together as like a car chase action moment. Does it work? How's the characterization? How's the pace? How's the flow? Is it too fast, too slow? Is it missing points? We usually start with what we call the circle of love. So, what did you like in the
that's
piece?
important. Okay.
And then we move on to like what it needed.
Mm-hmm.
Where did we think it was lacking?
Okay.
So like for that particular winger scene, I had probably like a page, a legal pad page of notes, both good and bad. And I say bad. It wasn't really bad. It was just like
it's constructive criticism.
It is. It's constructive criticism from folks who know what they're doing in the writing realm, because we've all read the same books. Like we had a long discussion at the top of our meet last week about what Chris Fox was doing and his new book.
Ah, okay.
Because some of us had read it, some of us hadn't, and kind of how we felt about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it's a good group to be in, and it's nice to get, especially for me, because most of my betas are in this genre or readers of the genre. It's nice to get an outside critique on story and the true nugget of the plot from people who, and I know that the first time I had them read something, because I had them also read a chapter out of Make the Right Choice, which was standard typical gay romance.
Yeah.
That they were like, we weren't sure we were going to like this, but your dialogue and your characters kind of sold it for us, And I would never give them, for example, a hardcore chapter to read. I'd never stick a sex scene in front of them. But for characters and general story, they're great sounding board.
It's good to have a different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
They're fun.
Yeah.
It's a good 90 minutes on a Saturday afternoon. All right. So wrap that up.
Is there anything we haven't covered?
No, I think that's
37 plus 10.
So we're in a good spot to move on to this week's question.
Okay.
You looked lost.
I don't know. I'm gonna close this out.
I know how to close it. I'll ask you if you would consider a writing group for yourself. Well, you can say whatever you're going to say, and then that'll wrap it up. Okay. So do you think you'd ever do a writing group for yourself? He laughs.
I laugh evilly because you know how I critique your work. You really want to unleash me on some poor unsuspecting group member. I mean, okay, generally I play well with others, but I have super specific ideas of what I like and don't like in fiction. So, I'm not sure a group would be particularly useful, or I don't know. I might rub some people the wrong way. Unintentionally, of course.
It's true.
I would never critique something out of malice, but I might have very strong opinions about something that, people might take the wrong way.
It's true, because he does occasionally rub me the wrong way. The way that his criticism can be correct, and the way he presents it is totally bad.
Yeah, it's not... Yeah, I agree.
I've learned better over the years how to filter that out, and he's learned a little better how not to be that way.
I've gotten much nicer, and I understand the circle of love concept of critiquing much more than I did a couple of years ago when we were working on stuff together.
Yeah.
So me personally, I'm not sure.
But flipping it on the other side, do you think as a writer you would benefit from the critique in the circle?
Maybe. I think the caveat with that is that I would have to... I feel like I would have to know that person and understand that person and respect that person before I took any of their critiques or viewpoints seriously. I mean, it can't just be someone I would know casually, or, you know, some person off the street saying, like, hey, do you want to pay to read my story? I don't think I would necessarily give much weight to, you know, someone's opinion that, you know, I don't know, or I don't know them and understand where they're coming from.
And I think we started our group right, because I think our first meeting or two, if I remember, was just most about get to know you, where are you in your process?
Yeah.
What do you read? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we got to...
You all need to be on the same page, more or less.
Yeah.
You can be at different points in your career, or, you know, about learning about your own writing process, but I think you need to be, you know... you need to be on the same page. You need to kind of have the same temperament is the word
That's actually a good one, yeah. Because... And you gotta at least want to read what most of the group's gonna give you. Because, I mean, I had to make a choice early on, like, do I want to be in a group that's mostly sci-fi writers?
Right.
And it's turned out to be really good. Because I've enjoyed reading what they have. I can't wait to read some of the books that are coming from these folks.
Yeah. Okay.
Chris, I'm talking to you because I know yours is coming.
Cool. Okay.
It's been a good time, and hopefully they've, you know, gotten a little glimpse of a genre that they don't play around in, you know, much at all.
Right. Yeah.
So, and they're good guys. I've actually been able, one of my trips to LA, because Brian lives in Pasadena, we got together for dinner. And so I've actually, you know, sat across a table from one of them.
Cool.
And of course Elvis is a friend, so
yes,
we see him all the time anyway.
Definitely, yeah.
So yeah. So moving on from that, let's go to the question of the week, which has nothing to do with writers groups, and it probably should have.
Well, what are you gonna do?
Well, we planned ahead because we recorded Serena a while ago, and she had to ask a question, and you know, she had to answer a question.
So what is the question of the week?
So the question this week is, as a reader, what's your favorite point of view and why? And I know you have distinct point of view ideas.
Yes, I do.
That drive you crazy sometimes.
Yeah. Personally, I prefer third person. I prefer reading stories in third person. Mainly because many years ago, I took a workshop from Gotham Writers Workshop in New York City. And we all had to submit pieces of fiction and critique them. And I read so much bad, really bad first-person fiction during that class. It literally turned me off from that point of view forever. So, first person is not my favorite. That doesn't mean that I can't enjoy it when it's done well.
And let's just say that the 90% of the stuff he reads from me is, in fact, first person.
Yes, it is. You do it well.
Thank
for
you.
the most part. I do critique you and give you some changes every once in a while.
Yes, and those are good.
But I mean, there are certain things like recently, of course, I just read Jordan Naser's books. Those are both in the first person. I love those to death. Off the top of my head, the Hunger Game books are, of course, in first person, and I love those as well. So it's not that I can't enjoy them. It's just as a general rule, I don't enjoy first person, and I prefer a more traditional third person narrative. How about you? I know that you love writing in first person.
I do love writing in first person. I like reading in first person. I think I'm a lot less keyed into point of view when I read. Unless I'm reading specifically from a craft eye, if I'm just reading, unless the point of view screws me up somehow, I'm probably not paying attention to it. Like you, and specifically with Jordan's books, you asked me while you were reading them about a point of view shift that he had, because we wanted to ask him about it in his interview. And I missed it completely that it shifted because I wasn't keyed into it.
It wasn't a shift. I asked if Jordan purposefully chose to write in first-person present tense, because that's a pretty unique way of presenting a narrative.
But he'd shifted in the second book. Sorry, that's why it was the shift, because you asked about that, and I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Because I was in the second book, and I was pretty sure that it was first-person past. And he'd shifted it, but my brain didn't click on it.
Yeah.
And like Serena Bowen...
You were just reading for story.
Serena and Elle did Him and Us in first-person present. And she'll actually talk a little bit about that next week, because she never envisioned herself writing in that tense.
Yeah.
But as long as it's done well, and it doesn't pull me out of the story because of the way it's handled, point of view doesn't really matter to me. I mean, like, one of my favorite books ever is Bright Lights Big City from Jay McInerney, and it's in second person. It'd drive you insane. We this and we that, and you this and you that.
Like Choose Your Own Adventure. That's the classic second person narrative.
And it's all very much, you do this, you do that, you're walking over here, you're meeting Tad at this place.
Yeah.
It was thrilling to read that kind of thing. I wrote one story like that in college. And it was... The class didn't hate it, but it was like, that was interesting, let's not do that again. And it was that way for me too as a writer, because that's a lot of work to build
that's
that
hard.
world.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah,
I agree.
So, what do you guys think? What's your point of view choice? Do you want the second person past? Do you want first person present? Do you want third person? What's it about for you?
Yeah.
You can leave us your answers on the show notes page for this episode at biggayfictionpodcast.com.
And remember, you can always suggest a question if there's something you'd like our listeners to answer.
Yeah. We're getting really good at getting answers. I loved seeing 40 answers this week. So the question was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So as we've alluded to a couple times in this episode, Serena Bowen's with us next week. Our USA Today. I think it's the first time we get to say USA Today bestselling author.
So exciting.
It's kind of exciting.
We're fancy.
Serena and Elle Kennedy are coming out next week with their sequel to the book Him, and it's called Us. And Serena's here to talk about that, her writing process, and a whole lot of other fun stuff. So we're looking forward to that next week.
Please tune in. And also, please remember that while you're leaving your answers to the question of the week, if you also happen to be on your favorite podcasting page or subscription service, you can always leave us a review. Reviews do help with discoverability of the show. So,
Reviewing a podcast is just as important as reviewing a book.
So, yes.
Leave those stars.
Follow AJ's example.
Yes.
We should all be as saintly and intelligent as AJ. Wait, what star did AJ give us?
AJ gave us 5 stars on iTunes.
Yes. Highly intelligent AJ. Follow his lead, everybody. So thank you, AJ. And if anyone has a chance, please leave us a review.
Yeah, in all seriousness, if you could leave us a review, that would be awesome. So we hope everybody has a good week, and we will see you back here next week.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for listening to Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast. For detailed show notes, go to biggayfictionpodcast.com.